Welcome in to PJ's Coffee, joining you live on Airline Drive on NewOrleans.Football. I'm Brooke Kirchhoffer, he's Nick Underhill, and Mike Triplett, getting into our 2023 Saints season review, evaluating how this 9-8 Saints team performed this past season.
Yeah, a lot to get into today. We're at the PJ's on Airline. Make sure you go and check that out. Great location here. It's lively, a lot of people, so get your day started every day with them. It's the absolute best blogger fuel, so make sure you get it and get your day started with that. And if you need a new car, check out my guy Matt Bowers, best car dealer in the whole entire galaxy. He'll get you right, get you in the car of your dreams at the best price with the best customer care. All right, let's hit these ads. The NewOrleans.Football show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee. PJ's Coffee has some of the best drinks that you can find. They have locations all over the city. They have pastries and everything else you need to get your day started. So go check them out. Are you looking for the perfect engagement ring? Look no further than Friend & Company Fine Jewelers' new engagement salon. This new area houses a wide selection of engagement rings to choose from in all cuts, sizes, and colors. Their experienced staff offer 5-star customer care to help you find the perfect ring to express your love. Visit their new engagement salon today. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers, the perfect ring for the perfect moment and also for the perfect person. 7713 Maple Street between Adams and Burdett Street. 504-866-5433. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers. Check them out at friendandcompany.com. Hard Hide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. NewOrleans.Football is proud to be sponsored by Firehouse Subs. Make sure you check out their location on Veterans Boulevard. All right, let's get into the show.
Let's get into our lead topic presented by Friend & Company Fine Jewelers, the official jewelers of the New Orleans Saints. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers is home to a new engagement salon where they have a wide selection of beautiful engagement rings. And while you're there, ask them about their fleur-de-lis collection of earrings and necklace that you see here. I have them on now. They are a great gift, and more importantly, they are specially priced for our NOF audience. Fellas, you got time before Valentine's Day. All right, let's get to our lead topic, 2023 season review. What would you fix? And what would you keep heading into 2024?
Yeah, I mean, the fix is the list is a little bit longer, I think. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I think they could fix with their team. We've talked a lot about the running game. We've talked a lot about the pass protection, which got a little bit better. We've talked a lot about the pass rush, which is something that they got to do. So, I mean, I think it's just all the points that we've kind of been hammering all along. And then, for themselves, I think that they want to fix their culture and have a better locker room and kind of have people be doing the things they need to do to win when they're away from the facility. So I think those are all the things that you would want to change. As far as the fix, I mean, I think the wide receivers have played really well. I think
what would you keep?
What would I keep?
I'm saying
or
as
keep,
far as what you would
keep.
keep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What would I keep? Yeah, the wide receivers played really well. I think they have a good secondary. I think they have a good defensive scheme. So I think all the stuff that worked was obvious and it worked, and the stuff that didn't, I think, we've been hammering that stuff for 6 months.
Nick's reading off my index card here. I didn't know you could see through it. Run game. What would you fix? Run game. Defensive line. The only thing you didn't say is I wrote run D and pass rush. The run D I thought was really bad this year. And what would you keep? Young wide receiver core. And I put Derek Carr under it. What I would agree with on that point is whatever they found in December, build off of it. Yeah. So, yes, we talked a lot about why Pete Carmichael had to go, why they're making a change at offensive coordinator while they're overhauling the offense. But I think they feel really good. I think we feel really good about the fact that Derek Carr and all of the receivers, and throw in Juwan Johnson in it too, they seem to have found something, and I hope that can carry over and it doesn't feel like they're starting at square one with that passing offense.
Yeah, you guys hit all the big topics. I'm going to go a little bit more specific on what I'd like to keep. I think you try and keep Isaac Yiadom and Jonathan Abram around, given what you've seen this season and being able to add depth heading into 2024, not trying to create depth. Being able to keep those guys around, I think that would help. I think you fix the defensive line. The O-line was manageable at the end of the season, but to me, the defensive line, and we've all harped on this. I think we're going to get into this once we get into our grades with the defensive line, but man, to me, that's got to be the biggest fix. Before we get to our grades, season MVPs, all that though, let's talk about this new coach that got a new request for a coach. Michael Hodges was requested to interview for the Patriots opening defensive coordinator job, and I believe that's the first time he's been interviewed for a DC job this in his career. What does it say about the job that he's done in New Orleans?
I mean, I think it's kind of obvious that, and sometimes it's hard to tell who the good coaches are, position coaches. I think he's one that seems kind of obvious, and I've been saying for a few years that I think one day he's probably going to be a head coach. Like, he just kind of has that charisma, and it seems like he has that attention to detail. He's clearly a culture builder in that linebacker room. The guys buy in. His players typically get better. He's good at developing, and you just kind of can see that being a spot of consistency. And it's a credit to him. He should be noticed and be getting these types of interviews. And I'm sure if he doesn't get this job, he'll be at some point in one of these roles sooner than later. People around the league want Dennis Allen's scheme, and people here can say whatever they want about it. It's one of the better schemes in the league. It works. It works consistently. It's influential in the NFL. So people want to tap into that, just like people want to tap into good offenses. So, I mean, and he's one of the younger guys that's part of that. So, like, there hasn't been a ton of people but we've seen it. Ryan Nielsen went on, now Hodges. And
Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, and he's someone that's tied in with – DA from I believe they went to the same college, right? He's a Texas A&M guy, and they're really tight. They great relationship, and he's kind of one of them guys that DA found and brought up and taught, and he came up through the tree. And whether it's now or later, I think it's time for him to get that type of opportunity. So no surprise to me. Gerard Mayo, was a linebackers coach in New England, played linebacker for New England. He knows good linebacker play. It's not a surprise that Hodges is somebody that's on his radar, and I kind of heard that there's somebody else here that's maybe the favorite, but I would not be surprised at all if he goes in there and interviews and kind of blows people away because he has that type of personality. So on the field, definitely deserving of it. But like, you get him in a room, and I think he can win over kind of pretty much anybody.
Yeah, no, look, I can echo everything you just said for the most part. I mean, has tremendous respect from the players as far as we can tell that, and that is young players who he's helped develop, like Caden Ellis, like what we saw with Zach Bowen toward the end of this year, but also Demario Davis, who they're probably about the exact same age, and Demario Davis had played in the league for a long time before he started working with Michael Hodges, and I think he just has a tremendous amount of respect for him, and they have a really close bond. I'm trying to think back over all these years, and it would be a disservice because I don't really know. I mean, Dan Campbell's a head coach now. Aaron Glenn's a defense coordinator now, who's doing a really good job. But I think the one assistant the Saints have had in all these years that I was like the most sure was going to go on to bigger and better things was probably Nielsen. Like, I could just tell. And Hodges reminds me of that. Like, Hodges is a guy who he will take higher steps on the ladder. I would bet good money on it.
Yeah, it's a good comparison with Ryan Nielsen. He does feel like that type that just has more to give to the game. And as you mentioned, a potential head coach one day, we'll see. But I think the coach now that is in New England, the now head coach, him being a former linebackers player, I think says a lot about Michael Hodges and him wanting to bring him in, because he obviously liked what he has seen just from how he's been able to manage that group. I'd be curious, though, who would be the defensive play caller, if he would give that up to Michael Hodges, or if Hodges would kind of play the role that Ryan Nielsen did under Dennis Allen.
Well, I think Mayo's going to call plays there,
Yeah.
so that's probably going to be the case. But, yeah, I mean –
which is probably a good thing if you're a first-year DC to not have to sink or swim in that role, right? If Michael Hodges does get that job?
It always depends. It depends what people want to do, what they aspire. But, I mean, look, you take the opportunity you can kind of get, especially if it's your first opportunity. So to kind of go there and be in that role, that'd probably be, solid for him. But I think Michael Hodges could handle calling plays. I don't think it'd be too much for him. I think if he ever got in a situation where he could do that, he'd probably be great at it.
And just as an aside, changing subjects, but this is a good time to mention. I was just listening to a different podcast where I think Peter Schrager, one of the hosts from the NFL, he's close with Cliff Kingsbury, and he revealed Cliff Kingsbury's interviewing for some offensive coordinator jobs. Don't know if he's talked to the Saints yet, but he revealed that Cliff Kingsbury specifically said the perfect job for him, he thinks, would be one of these jobs where they have a defensive head coach and a young quarterback so that it can kind of be his offense. We were just talking about that the other day, where we were saying the Saints' job could be attractive to top offensive coordinator candidates, and there is a top offensive coordinator candidate who is being quoted as saying, I would prefer to go somewhere where I get to run the offense. So that is something, and it like backs up what we talked about, that could be in the Saints' favor when they're hiring an offensive coordinator.
It's an interesting way to look at it. We expect to hear some more names come about. We have the three that we have heard so far be requested to interview for the OC job. All right, moving on to our season review. Let's get to our money segment presented by Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union, the 2023 season MVP and why. Still getting this voice back. It's working back, but I feel great. All right. Season MVP. Mine, and I want to go first because I feel like somebody else probably has it. Paulson Adebo. He's one of two players that all season long he's just one of two that the Saints that was voted as an NFC Player of the Week. Blake Grupe was the other one. 4 interceptions, which is a new season high for Adebo. He only missed 2 games, so he was, for the most part, reliable this season for the Saints. 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumbles recovered. I had Tyrann Mathieu kind of as my close second MVP. He also had 4 interceptions, and Tyrann Mathieu also had some. The way when he had his interceptions, it was almost game-changing plays. But to me, Paulson Adebo is that guy who deserves the most valuable player.
Go to Mike. I want to hear Mike's
Well,
first.
Yeah.
Paulson Adebo was my choice too, and I think I had said that before, and I agree with everything you said. But in addition to that, was the importance of his role this year because Alontae Taylor wasn't ready yet, and Adebo won that job, and then Marshawn Lattimore missed half the season. So Paulson Adebo became incredibly important to this team too. So I agree with that. But I'll go with DeMario. I had a backup choice, and Nick had some stats about all the different things that were actually the most or the best he has done in all his years with the Saints, which is hard to believe. 121 tackles is one of those, his highest total, tied his career high with 6.5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, 11 QB hits. Incredibly important as a leader on this team, holding the defense together when they went through that lull in the middle of the season and finished strong. Look, I mean, you can never argue against him as an MVP of this team too.
I went with Eric McCoy, and I kind of feel like if you take him off the team, they would have been absolutely screwed. And that's why I went with him.
It's a great pick.
I thought he had a good season, and his season's kind of interesting. He ended up giving up 27 pressures and 4 sacks, but he gave up 3 sacks in the first 4 games and then 1 just kind of the rest of the way. Once he locked in, seemed like he got comfortable with Carr. Things got a lot better for him, and he's just kind of been, I think he's just instrumental to that group and their success, and I think his importance to the team can't be overstated. And the little fight with Derek Carr, I think, was a turning point for the team. So that kind of brought everybody together as well.
You've seen the stats, the before fight and the after fight stats. Like people were asking Eric McCoy about it, and he laughed.
It was needed. It was needed. But yeah, I got him as the team MVP for sure.
Perfect segue to most improved. I've got Derek Carr as my most improved player for this year. If you watched our dot just in the last week, we did a comparison of Carr in the first 4 games versus the last 4 games, and the numbers are just so glaring. And 2, I mean, he got booed out of his own building and still responded and showed up for these Saints fans and continued to ask for their favor and continuing to show up. Look, has it been a rocky season with Carr? Absolutely. Being mindful that I have him as most improved, not as the MVP. But I think there were a lot of factors that went into why he had a successful end of season 2. The play calling got better. The offensive line play somehow got better, even though they were on their 2s and 3s toward the end of the season. The chemistry with the wide receivers got better. Chemistry with their center got better, clearly, after you just mentioned, a big turning point for them. I think it's something positive that the Saints can look for next year with Carr ascending at the end. My
most improved guy, and I kind of looked at it from year over year. Like, I think it is Adebo for me, but the other guy, and I'm not going to belabor that because you guys already talked about all the things he did well, 0 picks to 4 picks. But I think the other guy that deserves a lot of mention here is Malcolm Roach. His run defense this year before he got hurt was really good, and he's somebody that I think the Saints need to re-sign. And I think that, I think he's huge for their locker room. If they're trying to build culture, I think having him back is hugely important. But I think he flew way under the radar, and I think his loss was something that was a big hit to this team's run defense. And it was a lot better this year than it was last year.
The names I wrote down were also year over year as opposed to the beginning of the season to the end of the season. Adebo I had first, but he was also my MVP. I don't know if Carl Granderson definitely belongs here because he started to do this over the second half of last season. I think he just kind of continued what he was doing late last season. But when you combine what he did at the end of last season with what he did this season, I think he became an MVP. I mean, I think he was an MVP contender. I think he's one of the guys he's maybe the only guy you can build for the future on. Him and Brian Brzee on this defensive line. He had a career high 8.5 sacks after he had 5.5 last year. Signed that contract extension. I just think he has elevated his status so much this year to where you believe in him as kind of a core guy. And then the only other name that I think we need to mention here is Andrus Peat. I mean, I think everybody had left him for dead.
Yeah.
And he really maybe had his best season since like 2017 or 2018, and to do it back at left tackle especially. I think everybody wants him back now.
Yep.
I feel like we gave Andres Pete serious flowers too. I forget what game it was, but it was at one point in the season. I think it's when he did take over at left tackle, and we all were very surprised at how he was able to perform, and we did write him off. I feel like in training camp he was dealing with injuries. He didn't necessarily.
Saints wrote him off.
He got benched. Yeah,
and he didn't look like. Well, I think I said this too. He just didn't look like he was enjoying football as much, and he switched things around throughout the season and took responsibility at that left tackle position, in my opinion.
Yeah, we didn't write him off. He took a pay cut and got benched. Like, he was done. Yeah. That's not a misevaluation. That's them giving up on him at that point.
All right, let's get to our regular season grades per position, starting with quarterback. You want to lead us off?
Yeah, I was torn between C+ and B- basically because of what you said. Like, are we talking about total body of work or where he got at the end? But I think I feel pretty good about a B-. When you look at it all, if you just told me to review everything Derek Carr did by the end of it, he was 10th in the NFL in passer rating, really 8th among all quarterbacks who actually played the whole season. 25 TDs, 8 interceptions. 228 yards per game was low, but his passer rating of 97.7, the third highest of his career. Completion percentage, third highest of his career. It was just how it happened. It got so low for a while, and then it got really good at the end. But if health was a big reason for that, if getting on the same page and learning the offense and learning the receivers was a part for that, I feel pretty good about a B-, and I actually feel pretty good about him being the quarterback again next year.
I'm on the same page. I gave a C because I was like, he passed, but barely. I couldn't give him a B. I gave the quarterbacks a C.
Yeah, so like, what's the C? 70%, like in a
you
class,
passed.
Right? It's like a 70%
I think
rating.
of C is almost like a 50%. Like C is average.
I mean,
dead average.
Right.
I know in my classes
passed,
I had to get 70% to get a C, and I was usually below that 70%, so I'm very familiar with that 70%. So, I mean, that was usually the mark. I mean, I feel like it's a low C. Like, you got that last 4 or 5 games, but like before that, there was a lot of like, man, this guy isn't doing it, and I think just being fair to the whole process, like I think it's a low C for me.
Wide receivers.
B. I'll give him a B. I mean, I think they were pretty good most of the year. If Mike hadn't gotten hurt, if Chris hadn't had his little lull, I think we're probably like higher up. But I think just like a solid B overall for the group.
I gave him a B too because they had to be above a C, but I couldn't quite give them the A. So I'm with you on giving the wide receivers a B.
I wrote B as well, and that's a grade that they raised too. I mean, they were probably a C+ heading into December, and they got up to a B by finishing strong. I mean, Olave we didn't mention him in the MVP conversation, but if I could only protect one player on the team, it might be him, and I think he got back there to where we felt about him in the preseason by the end of the year, and a lot of that was learning how to work with this quarterback, and they really became probably the unit with the highest grade on here by the end of it, maybe.
Maybe. All right, tight ends.
I went D. I mean, they didn't get a lot out of him. I mean, Taysom, if you want to count him in there, he raises it up. Without Taysom, Juwan was absent most of the season. I think Foster had a pretty good season in his own role, but overall, I feel like they definitely, if there was an average bar, I feel like they were a little bit below average.
I couldn't pass them. I gave them a D too.
Yeah, I wrote C-, but I don't know.
D's get degrees, man. D's a passing grade. D is a passing grade. Absolutely. Yeah, you can get out
We've
of high
got
school
Brandon chiming in the
question
background.
about it.
He never agreed with one of our points more strongly than that one for some reason. But, I wrote C-, but I don't know why I gave him that much credit. Maybe because I had Taysom in my head, but definitely a D+ average among the group is probably deserved. It was underachieving across the board too. And look, when we talk about all this, we're talking about their position coaches and how they were used just as much. Like the tight ends didn't just go out there and fail on their own. They also weren't used correctly. They didn't. I mean, Foster Moreau, whatever their plan for him was, they didn't execute it. Juwan Johnson, it took until the very end of the season to look like what we thought he was going to look like. And Jimmy Graham, we talked all year long about like he was inactive for half the season, even though he seemed to be a fairly effective red zone target.
The running backs, this one. A lot of injuries, suspensions, expecting a whole lot from a rookie who was dealing with injuries, expecting a whole lot from the 2022 season touchdown leader. I gave these guys a D, and I almost wanted to even go a little bit lower just because it was so underachieving. the only reason why I didn't go below a D is just for what Alvin was able to produce and bring. And then just that little blurb that we saw when Kendre Miller's healthy, what he can be. I'm actually really excited to see a healthy Kendre Miller next year with the Saints.
I don't even know what to do with this because, like, Alvin to me was like if you're doing offensive MVP, like he was second to me behind McCoy, I think, on that list. But everybody else is an F at running back, and Alvin is that. So I don't know what the average is of those two things, but whatever it is, that's what their grade is. So Alvin. But if you're gonna grade this on a curve and you're getting rid of the highest point, so you're getting rid of Alvin's grade, they failed. But Alvin did exist and he was the backbone of that group. But I don't really know how to average those.
It's
two
so
things
funny.
out.
My card here, I wrote C-, and then I erased it and made it a C just because of Alvin. And I have all these Alvin notes. He finished 89 yards per game from scrimmage and 6 TDs. 75 catches. If he would have played just one more game, played that last game, he would have finished with the exact same 81 catches that he had in his first 3 seasons when he kept having 81 catches exactly first. I mean, he was darn near 100 yards a game from scrimmage for the first 8 weeks after he came back, and he was such a core value part of this offense. But even with all that, he only averaged 3.9 yards per carry, which was the second lowest of his career. They didn't know how to use Jamal Williams. Kendre Miller barely got on the field. The position group was a huge disappointment, but Alvin was like the kid in the group project who's like, well, they haven't texted me back, Mom, so I guess I'll just do the thing by myself, and the whole grade we'll all get a C together.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate for Alvin that we do have to value them as a group because he just stands alone. He's not even really on the same playing field if you're just looking at the stats this year. But it's running back groups. We're giving them a grade. They probably would have been failing for all three of us.
It's another position where the coaches and the coordinators all deserve blame for not using any of them to their fullest or putting any of them in their best position. And Alvin does get included with that.
Yeah. All right, offensive line is next. This is another one that highs and lows. I have to give credit for the backups that have stepped in, but when you're just evaluating the group, they were one of those two where you could give them a failing grade. I bumped them up to a D, though, for my grade for the offensive line.
You're such a hard grader. It's 9 and 8 teams getting nothing but D's from Brooke. I was between C- and D+ because they finished so strong. But D+, when I just think across the board, I mean, you got to factor Trevor Penning into this group, who is obviously an F. Because, he was supposed to be the starting left tackle, and he was benched within a month and never got the job back. The sacks they allowed early in the season led to that Derek Carr injury and led to those injuries that continued all year long. They really, really improved in that area. Eric McCoy was Nick's MVP, so you got to give him some credit for that. But they never really fixed the run game. 31st in the NFL with 3.6 yards per carry. I thought that was bad all the way through the season.
D, but mostly because of the offensive scheme and them having a poor plan.
Yeah, a lot of that goes back. We'll see what happens, too. I'm curious, whoever the offensive mind is that comes in here, what will the offensive line look like? All those things. I think we'll get a better evaluation of that group when they get a new OC. Switching over to the defensive side of things, linebackers, we're back up. I'm off the C's and D's. I'm back to a B with the linebackers. And let me just say this. I know we're going to go through this list. I didn't give anybody an A because I didn't feel like nobody deserved an A. So B to me is like my highest I'm going to give in case you guys are watching and wondering when that A is going to come. It's not coming from me. But I do give the linebackers a B. Hit or miss, yes, with the running quarterbacks. I think they were exposed a couple of times, Demario Davis specifically, but I think that goes back to defensive scheme as we have talked about on our shows. But all in all, I grade the linebackers a B.
I had the same thing. I thought DeMario had a great season. Obviously, he was MVP candidate for the team, all-pro player. He raises that group a little bit. I thought Pete Werner was fine this year, kind of a little bit disappointed. I was hoping for another step, but I don't know that we necessarily saw that. Nephi Sewell came into his own before his injury, so that's more credit to their development. He filled in, and you didn't miss anyone when he was playing. Zach Bond figured out how to be effective and get on the field and kind of grow into his own role, and they found a plan for him. So I thought overall that group was solid. So, solid is a B to me.
I wrote B- just because I don't know how much credit I can give to anyone who's a part of a run defense that I thought was one of the biggest deficiencies of the whole team. 22nd yards per game, 24th yards per carry. But individually, I like all those guys. You could easily talk me into that B too. Yeah.
All right, moving on. Defensive ends. I'll go last, just I'm curious to hear from you guys on this group.
I got a D- for him. I mean, the production was just poor, but Carl Granderson played well. But overall, I mean, and again, it's injuries. It's not having enough talent. It's kind of more on the front office and the players on the field that they didn't get more out of this position. Cam Jordan's hurt, so that kind of brings it down. But, you know, you got to factor in the production overall. And overall, the production I thought was really low. So, I mean, that's where I end up on it.
I was actually more like C-, D+ in this group too. I mean, there were sometimes the first month of the season and sometimes down the stretch where, I mean, their defense seemed great again. Like, you know, there were some teams they manhandled, but yeah, D+ is fine with me. They didn't have a good enough pass rush and they didn't have a good enough run defense. 35 sacks. Oh no, that's what the offensive line. 34 sacks by the defense, tied for the fourth fewest in the league. D+.
Yeah, I gave him a D. Moving over to D tackles.
Same thing.
I gave him an F. I gave him an F. Here's why. The gap integrity was so bad just across the entire defensive line. Like the communication from tackle to ends, it just was like, how many times did we talk about that week after week? How many times did we talk with Malcolm Roach before he got injured and Cam Jordan? Malcolm Roach was in tears. He was so frustrated with the run lanes just being wide open for these offenses and them just not being able to figure it out. It got to the point to where it was the question week after week after week. Yes, it did improve, I guess, a little bit at the end of the season, but to me that was like the breaking point, I think, in the locker room. And that was the first time I saw like real tears and emotion when they talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, I got a D for them. I mean, I thought Brian Brzee had a good rookie season. He didn't really play a lot of run defense, so he doesn't have a lot of dirty hands on that. He hit the numbers, though, sack-wise, that I think we all kind of wanted to see, and that's a tough position to kind of transition into. So I'm really high on him, and I think he's going to get better as he learns how to play with lower leverage and all that stuff and just keeps coming into his own and gets more comfortable and then learns how to play the run, too, a little bit better, which I think he got better at later in the year. But him aside, I mean, I thought it was incredibly disappointing. The run defense was just way too poor to really let anyone off the hook here. So they were below average for sure.
Yeah, and I'll give them a D+. I mean, I had trouble putting all the, like, I was leaning towards C- as my worst grade for all the defensive units because I still think this defense is pretty good. I think it's an above-average defense overall, so it's hard to have that many Ds on there. But D+ for the defensive tackles, that's my lowest graded unit of all of them. Yeah.
Safeties. What do we got?
I got a B. I mean, I thought Tyron had a good season. I thought in spurts Jordan Howden was good when Jonathan Abram in there. I thought he played well. I thought Marcus May was solid when he was out on the field. Him and Tyron kind of had some communication going this year better than last year. So I thought there was more continuity and familiarity in that group. But I thought they were pretty good overall. Lonnie Johnson had some decent games. I mean, they just had a lot of depth there and a lot of guys that stepped up and played well. So yeah. I was impressed with how they played throughout the year.
I gave them a B+ too. The fact that they were so depleted at that position and you couldn't tell by the time they played the Bucs with Jonathan Abram stepping in and really just showing again why he should probably be somebody they try to keep around for next year.
Yeah, and I gave him a B. I could easily give him a B+. It's funny. I think their grade has gone up during the playoffs because one thing that never happened with this team all year was a quarterback just never torched them, except for that Rams game. And we kept saying, well, they didn't play any quarterbacks. Well, they played C.J. Stroud. They played Jordan Love. They played Baker Mayfield twice. They weren't getting torched by those guys who are still going in the playoffs. And I think you mentioned Marcus May in your list of guys. Yeah. He was having a real – I made note, too. I think we'd be really high on him if he hadn't gotten hurt, too. Yeah.
I almost gave the cornerbacks an A+, but after what we saw – in LA, I had to give him a B. Yeah. I couldn't give him that A
to B?
Not A+. I couldn't give them the A grade. So I'm going B for the cornerbacks. Overall, I think they had a solid year, but that one game, it was just really glaring. When you went up against a solid offense, you got exposed.
To me, it's an A. And, I mean, look, they were playing with an injured group, and they played the best offense they were going to play on a short week. And they didn't have the same amount of time to prepare and everything. Maybe on a full week of preparation, they look a little bit better. I mean, the fact that we're even talking about them in this context is a huge credit to that coaching staff. The fact that they were able to play after losing Marshawn Lattimore, and it wasn't an issue the whole entire year. So, you know, Ike Adams stepping up and looking the way he did, Paulson Adebo having the season he had is a huge credit to that group. Marshawn's Marshawn. I mean, it's an easy A for me.
Yeah, I'll go A-, but, I mean, we're nitpicking for all those reasons, and that's without Marshawn for all those games. And yeah, I mean, Paulson Adebo played above his skis. Isaac Yiadom way better than we thought we were going to get out of him. I don't know that Alontae Taylor played better than we thought, and he was up and down this year, obviously, but not enough to bring down the position grade for the whole group. And again, like we said, the Rams are the only team that really beat up this team through the air all year long.
All right, kicker.
I just went C. I mean, he was to me. He ended up league average, 81% field goals. If you include, he made every extra point. It was over 90%. He was about what I think an average kicker is like. We compared him to Will Lutz all year, but if for some reason like Will Lutz had retired and they found this guy, I thought he was as expected.
I gave him a C as well.
I went B. I mean, I thought he was solid. He missed a couple 29-yarders, which is rough, but I mean, I think overall for a rookie, by the end of the season, you felt confident when he went out there to kick.
Yeah.
I gave Lou Headley, the punter, a B.
I went D on him. I mean,
wait, you said a B?
I gave Lou Headley a B based on at the end of the season. A lot of the grades that we saw, hearing from Rizzy and things like that. I probably got swindled by Rizzy a little bit on this grade, but I'm giving Lou Headley a B.
I will give the punt coverage an A+, and I give the punter a D. Like, it's just, I'm sorry, like, there's just not enough, maybe I'm too old school or whatever, but, like, it just doesn't. Grading
Lou Headley above Blake Groupie is just shameful, I think.
Just the group, the group he misses, the Packers game, the one that stands out to me, I don't know. This one could go either way. You can give them both C's. You can give them both B's, in my opinion, depending on how you argue it.
This dude has some, 30-yard punts.
I like Groupie a lot more than I like Headley. And look, Lou Headley, it's so interesting because their theory was right on the Lou Headley style. They finished, in the NFL, they had the fewest return yards per punt in the entire NFL. 163 total return yards on 75 punts. It was like 2 yards per punt return. But even with that, Lou Headley still finished 28th in the NFL in net punting average. He finished dead last in gross punting average. He had the shortest punts in the NFL of any full-time punter this year. And even though they didn't return him, his net punting average was still in the bottom 5 in the NFL. It wasn't good enough.
That coverage unit was insanely good. Insanely good. And that's the only way it works. If you have an average day on cover and punch, like, you're going to get it's tough. Like, you can't exist like that. So, yeah, would you give him?
I gave him a D+.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
All right, returners.
I mean, dude made the, he's an all-pro, so A.
Yeah.
I went B+.
I went B+, too. I mean, he is an all-pro, but he was like 6th in punt return and 14th in kickoff return. He was an all-pro because everybody knows him as a receiver.
It was a good year.
Yeah.
It was a good year.
He did have a return, though, but B+. I mean, that's a good grade. But I didn't think he was the best in the NFL, and their kickoff returns in general were middle of the road, so B+.
All right, that's all of our grades for the position groups. When we return, we will hear from you, our NOF audience, with 2 questions of the day and, of course, continue our coverage from the 2023 season in review. We'll be right back.
It's carnival time at New Orleans Hamburger and Seafood Company. Our gumbo combos are back. Enjoy our hot gumbo, fries, and your choice of shrimp, catfish, soft-shell crab, or frog legs starting at $9.99 at New Orleans Hamburger and Seafood Company.
Are you tired of renting and ready to own your dream home? Contact Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union, your trusted source for home loans. Our competitive rates and flexible terms can help make your home ownership dreams a reality. If you're a first-time home buyer or looking to refinance, our experienced lenders are here to help. Our online application process allows you to apply on your schedule. It's quick, easy, and convenient. Visit us online at jeffersonfinancial.org to learn more. Federally insured by NCUA.
Martin Wine and Spirits is home to a selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and much, much more. They are family owned and operated since 1946 and specialize in wine, spirits, gourmet food, gift baskets, catering, and tasting events. They have many locations, so they're never too far away. You can check them out in Metairie, New Orleans, Mandeville, and Baton Rouge, or if it's more convenient, you can always shop online. Whether you're a wine novice or a seasoned collector, you'll enjoy the Martin Wine and Spirit experience.
Welcome back to PJ's Coffee live on Airline Drive. Let's get to our best and worst moments of 2023 presented by New Orleans Hamburger and Seafood Company. All right, let's start with best moment from the season.
Best moment of the season for me, and I went with games on both of these. Like, it was just the Atlanta game in general, like the whole entire thing.
The second one.
Yeah, it worked up to a crescendo at the end of the year, and That was the first time I really felt like, oh, wow, this team could actually be good. The problem is when it ended, and in the way that undermined the whole
I
entire
can't
process.
give it the whole game for that reason.
But like to me, that game though, just the way they played, like it just kind of was like, okay, like this was what it was supposed to be. The week before, it felt like they were building towards something, and then that one, it was just like, all right, and they kind of cemented it, and it kind of was the icing on the cake of like, if they were going to keep everything together, what did you need to see? Okay, it was that. So they kind of gave you what you needed to see in that last moment of the season.
And I went specifically from that game, the Chris Olave catch, like the most incredible, like, maybe not even his most incredible catch of the season, but still one of the most incredible catches I ever saw. But just how that was the icing on the cake of how far Derek Carr and Chris Olave had come. That we midway through the season, we thought, is this a disaster? And by the end of the season, it was like, oh, these two, I can't wait to see more from them. I mean, honestly, if you have one of those like decibel reading meters or like a heart rate chart, like I never felt higher on this team than when Derek Carr completed that touchdown pass to Rashid Shaheed in Week 1, and it was mic'd up and all that, and we thought, oh wow, they really have something here. It just went away for so long after that.
Yeah, you took my best.
Yeah,
that was my. I'm going. You guys went Week 18. I'm going Week 1. It was the freaking run clip of Derek Carr throwing a go route to Rashid Shaheed. The reason why it was the moment for me, it was because there's so much hope, there's so much promise for this offense. What is it going to be? To me, it was like the peak of a high moment that just came crashing down. But
honestly, you could go with the preseason touchdown drive. That everything worked so perfect, and then Derek Carr and the starters all rested. Like that was probably when we were the highest on
not
them
even
all.
that. It's not even just the play, it was the situation. 3rd and 6, you had 2 minutes. You had to get this first down in order to seal the game. And we're like, all right, he's a game manager, this quarterback. Like, he's able to find his guys. He's able to trust in his wide receivers and their speed. He knows which ones to go to. And unfortunately, it just took a while to get back to that. All right, let's go to our worst moment now from the 2023
Packers game. I mean, no doubt about it. They were flying so high. Carr gets hurt. They collapse in the second half, missed field goal. Jameis has an opportunity to kind of run away with that game, doesn't take advantage of it. The whole team was just deflated. And in hindsight, when you look back on it, as Mike Triplett said in the moment, like that was a damning afternoon for the team, and it kind of undermined their whole season. So I don't think anything else even comes close. Like that was absolutely
well. And I'm going to get even more specific. It's Derek Carr getting hurt in the Packers game because, as he later alluded to, he didn't feel healthy again until December. And so not only did they end up losing that game that was so costly, it sapped all that momentum, it affected the way he played for months after that.
Yeah.
But if I want to pick a different candidate, I mean, to me it's the first Atlanta loss. They went into Minnesota the week before the bye where everyone was kind of like, does this team have anything? And they played like crap. Then they had a bye week, and then they come back to Atlanta, and it's like, all right, now you basically have to go 5-2 down the stretch, show us what you're made of. And they just let an Atlanta team that said, we're just going to run on every play, run all over them, and they scored 0 points and went 0 for 5 in the red zone. I don't think it's felt lower with this team since 2016 than it did that week.
For my worst moment, I'll go worst quarter. The first quarter of that Lions game. When we
that
all
was right
just
after that too.
We all just looked at each other and thought, has the defense played worse? You remember the Lions, bam, 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 all 3 first possessions, touchdowns. Derek Carr threw a pass to Juwan Johnson that got knocked out or whatever, and Juwan probably should have held on to it. It was an interception. It was just so ugly. 3 straight punts for the Saints on offense. They did not score until the second quarter. That was the bleakest I have felt watching this team, was the first quarter against the Detroit Lions. And to be fair,
all the Lions fans, that was the game where they're booing Carr every time he enters the field, and they're cheering every time Taysom Hill replaces him.
And to be fair to the conversation, our lead topic, I think, in that game was how the team responded in that game. And that was the first time we really saw the Saints respond and show fight. And you saw very quickly in that second quarter, Derek Carr just snapped right to it and didn't let the boos affect him. They got back into the game. They still lost that game, but man, to come back from one of the worst performances I've ever seen in a first quarter of football and still have the gall to come back and show that you have something left in the tank, to me was impressive to see.
Yeah, no doubt. This is a good pick.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our Martin's question of the day. Martin's is home to a wide selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and more. We're going to start doing 2 questions now for Martins. Our first question is on Fridays. Do you expect the Saints to have an OC hired by the Senior Bowl?
No. I mean, maybe, but no. Possibly, but no. I mean, it's hard to say. Like, it depends on what candidates they have that are still in the playoffs that they want to talk to, because you kind of got to wait to talk to them guys. So if it needs to wait until one of those situations is over to do all your interviews, then it depends how long they play, and maybe it goes beyond the Senior Bowl, and it takes a little bit longer to put together, and that's fine. But a lot of times that Senior Bowl week is usually where kind of things shake loose and things kind of happen, and you get everybody in the league in the same place, and things just kind of come together, and rumors start flying. And if you're waiting to kind of put something together and a guy you want, you hear a rumor about him maybe going somewhere else. Like, that's where everybody kind of hears everything about everything that's going on, because you get a bunch of people in the same place and nobody can shut the hell up, and that just kind of helps things happen. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible it goes beyond, but I would guess right around that week is probably the sweet spot for something.
The other thing about that week is it's the dead week, the bye week between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl. So I think when the NOF crew rolls into Mobile to start Senior Bowl week, which is what we actually think of as the Senior Bowl, is the commingling of it. I don't think it'll be done, but maybe by the time the Senior Bowl is played at the end of that week on Saturday, maybe it's done by then. Yeah.
What would have to happen for it to happen even before Saturday? Like, for it to even happen maybe earlier in that week? What things would the Saints front office have to check off in order to say this is the guy we want?
I mean, I don't think it's going to happen like that, because I think there's people in the playoffs that they want to talk to, and I think there's people in the playoffs they want to talk to. I think there's people in the playoffs that they want to talk to.
But furthering that point from what we've been able to gather too is sometimes they might legitimately have a target. Like, it feels like the Atlanta Falcons want to hire Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
And that could happen any day if Bill Belichick says yes. This process with the Saints feels very much like they want to study and meet and explore several certain candidates.
Even when they had a target for head coach, they spent Senior Bowl week interviewing all these people the whole entire week, long interviews, going through their process. That's just – Mickey just does it like that. Like, I don't think there's going to be a different way of doing it. I don't think it's going to be like sit down and like we have to get this done. Like, he's just going to run his process. And if somebody doesn't want to wait for him to run his process, he's usually like, okay, well, F him. Like, that's just kind of how he operates. So – he's going to do things on his time frame, and kind of just based in the past, like it always is kind of right around Senior Bowl week when they make a change to something. The only time that like it seemed like something like impulsive happened was when they took Rick Rieprich to the Senior Bowl, fired him while they were there, and hired Jeff Ireland while they were there. But like that was when Sean Payton was still here too, and you don't have that kind of devil on the shoulder speeding everything up anymore.
Hired Jeff Ireland and Dennis Allen on the same day in Mobile. Those were 2 pretty good hires.
Yeah,
in 2016, right? Or 2015, right? As they were trying to get out of that last lull. You hit on a couple. You hit on DC and college scouting director like they did then. It really helps.
All right, next question. Will the new OC have a say on what coaches he wants on his staff, like offensive line, running back coach, etc.? Same with the players, or will that be on DA? I just feel like Pete had a say on what he preferred.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the OC says this is my guy on O-line and this is the reason why, sure. This is my guy at tight end and why, sure. Like, I don't think that any of that stuff's going to be, off the table. And Mickey kind of alluded to that too, that they were going to be, open to possibly other staff changes. He doesn't expect them to happen, but he doesn't expect them not to happen. So that means he's open to that process, and you kind of got to be. As far as player input in that, like every coach on the staff has input on the players they want. They go through the draft process. The scouts do their things, and then it goes to the coaches, and then the coaches have their input on top of it, and that's how things are kind of put together. So if the OC has a certain type of player he needs to run his offense, they're going to get that type of player. I mean, it would be counterintuitive not to.
Yeah, I made this point on the last show. It's interesting the people who are still currently on the staff. Ronald Curry, obviously highly regarded. Doug Marrone, highly regarded. Clancy Barone, tight ends coach. Kevin Carberry is the assistant offensive line coach. I feel like any of them could be replaced if the person they want to hire has someone they swear by, like Nick said. But I think they're probably in the building because they want to offer them as possibilities to the next coordinator. They might help draw the next offensive coordinator. So it will be interesting to see if any changes are made, but I do think it's possible for sure.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's Friday. They have 3 guys that they have requested to interview. We expect that number to increase as the weeks go on. We've got something exciting for you guys Monday. I'll kind of let you preview where they will see us Monday.
Well, all things go well, we'll be in our new studio, so yeah.
Which is just such an awesome and exciting thing. And look, guys, we would not be here being able to do this if it wasn't for your support. And if you guys are just a member on YouTube, which is free, please come join us on NewOrleans.Football. It will be worth your money for all the stuff that is coming up. Be sure to go to NewOrleans.Football/subscribe and come join us, join the NOF family. I know Mike and Nick have some exciting things on the way that will only be behind that NOF paywall. So make sure you guys are dialed in, and we will see you Monday in our new studio. We'll see you guys then. We can't wait.